very much. So here's what's going to happen next. Now I have these questions that are pre-prepared that I'm going to be asking you. We're going to be covering seven topics. I'll run through them really quickly. We're going to talk about student advocacy, SOF funding, campus diversity, advising, outreach, and food desert, and then we're going to have time for closing statements at the very end. Similar as to what Alex said earlier, you guys are going to have 2 minutes to answer these questions. Alex will help me keep track of time. If you invert from the top or I feel like you're not answering the question, I might butt in and ask you to correct yourself. Try not to go over time, and no one is allowed to jump into the other person's conversation during the time to talk. So we're going down the road, we're getting from left to right. We're starting with you guys. It's not directed to a specific person, so the whole group has a chance to answer it. So it's not like I'll be asking Zach just answer this one question. I'll give you a chance to answer it as well. So first question is regarding student advocacy. There's been a big push by students to get direct involvement in the decision-making process regarding major university issues such as the Presidential Search Committee and the Director of Public Safety, just to name a couple. However, the demand for direct involvement in such committees has come to no avail. What are your plans specifically for successfully addressing these issues of representation? Zach?
Well, right there you just directly referenced some of the work that Sam and I have done this year regarding making sure that students are included in those committees. With the Presidential Search Committee, Sam and I went to the Board of Trustees and we said, hey, we think students have a really valuable perspective to provide on this committee, and we believe that students should be included in this process. Chuck Swoboda, the chair of the committee, the Board of Trustees, ultimately denied that request. He said that students weren't really qualified to be part of that conversation. Sam and I said, we'll agree to disagree, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop asking. And that's, I think that's how Marguerite and I are going to approach it. We're going to be just even more persistent, being denied once already. Dr. Callahan has at least hinted that she believes that students should be included in some of these committees. She hasn't specified which ones she believes student perspective is valuable and which ones it might not be as important. We believe it's important in all of them. We'd be very diligent about making sure that students are included. I think persistency is going to be key in that. We have to just nag and nag until students are a part of that committee.
Anything you care about?
I completely agree. We will work really diligently to ensure that students are adequately represented and have a say in the highest positions within this university. That's as simple as that.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. So if elected, really from our first day, we're going to be advocating for students to be in those search committees. Obviously, the university listened for some of the current open positions. So there's a student on the DPS chief. So we're going to be pushing administrators from our first day. We all have someone who we know that was recently, like all of us know someone who's let go recently. So there's a lot of different opinions going out around campus, and a lot of people who feel like they need to have their voices heard. So whether it's ultimately denied, we're going to fight to get a student on every committee, and if we're denied, try to find different ways to get the student voice included in those committees. So if we're having open forums with business students about their future dean, if administration does not let us into the committee, that's a great way that we'll be facilitating that.
Right. I support everything that Tyler just said in terms of making sure that the students are heard and have a voice. Again, we can only try as much as we can to push for that and keep coming back and pushing again and again and again. I think the important thing is to also remember and just keep in mind the frustration. So even though we are denied access into those different forums, just remember that every day we fight for all of the frustrations that are had on campus. So.
Yeah, it's no secret that Natalie and I are 100% behind students on these search committees. Every single person here is paying, or their family is paying, $40,000 a year for their students to be here. We're looking at a great deal of transition for students at this university. We're not asking for a 51% voting share on these search committees. We're asking to have the student voice included, and we think that it brings a unique perspective that is necessary for the future of this university, either the future alumni and the future donors to sustainability in this campus. So in terms of specifics, it's going to be working directly with administrators, interim provost Callahan, and the new provost, and whomever the new president becomes. But I think that we have a great opportunity here to collaborate with the student media. And these are the two largest venues for student voice on campus, is student government and student media. There's no reason that we can't work together to push an agenda that says students need a voice on these committees.
Yeah, and even though students currently not on the presidential search committee, the provost did speak about other ways that students can raise their voice in town, and I very much want to push for that, working closely with programs and other ways to really make sure that students can, even though they're not on a committee, that their voice and concerns are being heard.
Okay. Now, for the next questions, after we do everyone, we're going to start at the other end and go back, so that way we're not always starting with the same set of candidates. So the next question, hypothetically here, if you fail to gain access to these committees you've just been talking about and other set committees, that committees of the student body, again, deemed necessary and important to have a voice in, how do you plan to still advocate on their behalf? What are you going to do?
Certainly. So it starts by, so this year we didn't get the student on the chair for, or excuse me, on the search committee for president. Out of those conversations that said we need to have students involved with this, we became one of the groups that got a listening session with the members of the search committee saying this is what we want to see in those individuals. So in the event that we should be denied access to a seat on these committees, I think it's imperative that the administration at least grant us the ability to voice in a public forum. This is what we're looking for in the next dean of the business school. This is what we're looking for in the next provost, especially with the new strong provost model.
Yeah, I agree definitely with that. It's really important for students to know that even if we do push and we are denied, that we're going to work as much as we can. Kyle spoke previously about working with social media and student media on this campus, and I think that is the best tactic, for their voices to be heard.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I already touched on this one in the first answer, but we would definitely be continuing what Kyle said, to do open forums. I'm really pleased that the search committee took the time out for the presidential search to include a student listening session, and so we would be actively finding the different interest groups for each open position and making sure that those voices at minimum had an open forum, and if that were not the case, then to have a internal MUSG listening session with them and then raise those concerns to the administrators.
And it's not only pushing for the characteristics that students want to see in these individuals that are hired into the position, but also realizing the characteristics that are necessary to further push whatever they directly influence. So not only what they bring to the table as individuals, but how they're going to affect, certain issues within the College of Business, for example, and how those affect the students overall. So going a step further, not only looking at those firsthand characteristics.
So thank you. We have a lot of the similar ideas that the past two tickets have stated, and Zach has worked exceptionally diligently to ensure that there is student representation, and we will just continue to be more persistent and have those open forums, open dialogue, open door kind of methods in order to ensure that students' voices are heard in these high-level positions.
One thing I would add that hasn't been mentioned, I don't think, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I would utilize student media. It's funny, in my position this year, it's interesting to see how scared administrators get of having something written about their position, about having something printed in the Tribune about how they aren't doing something, they aren't accommodating students. I would work with student media to sort of use them as an additional tool to push administrators to get what we want. When they see an editorial that says you're doing something wrong, they get scared, and I would use that as a tool to make sure the students' voices are being heard.
Okay. Thank you. Third question, start in the middle. This past Thursday, current MUSG President Sam Schultz said in a statement addressing the Senate that out of all the years he has served on MUSG, that this year's group has been the most, and I quote, inward thinking. Do you agree with this statement? Why or why not?
So we have a little bit of a different perspective. Rosie's never been in student government before, so she can kind of talk about what her view is. But I've been involved in student government since the end of my freshman year, and I would tend to agree with President Schultz in that statement. We've seen a lot of internal focus on trying to fix the different departments, trying to fix student organization funding, which definitely needs some help. But something that we took really strongly into account when building a platform is that we have a different view. We think that of our top 3 priorities, MUSG's internal policy should be third. Students should be the first. Their student life and academics should be number 1s and 2, with MUSG being the third. People don't need to be worried about what MUSG is budgeting or how the different departments are working. We need to be advocating for their advising needs, for their needs on a day-to-day basis.
Exactly. I mean, you know, attention on what is going on internally within MUSG is important because you need to reflect on the processes and how efficient they are and if they're working. But the point of student government is the students, and MUSG is not the student body. So again, Tyler has mentioned that I'm not in MUSG. I have not been in MUSG, and I see that as a positive, as an advantage. He grounds me a lot in knowing, you know, what MUSG has done and what it can do, and I push those boundaries on presenting, you know, opportunities and just trying to get ahead in those things. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I share the same sentiment that Sam said that night. I sit next to him at Senate, and we have a conjoining office, actually, so I think if we're going to agree on a lot of things, I mean, we're good friends. We ran together last year, and so we've seen MUSG this year amend our Constitution a lot. There's been a lot of fighting between departments, even within departments especially. I don't think that's what students are looking for in a student government. It's people who are going out to organizations, finding out what students want, and then acting on their behalf, not this you know, more selfish, talking about what your priorities are within the organization. That's not what a student government should be. It should be representative of the students. So that's what Marguerite and I would push for, I think.
And just to clarify, so you do think that has been an issue?
Yeah, a very big issue. I was only in the Senate for 1 year as opposed to Sam's 4 now, before I became executive vice president. I think as opposed to last year, it's been very much so. We've been looking inward. We've been talking about our own problems instead of going out and doing our job.
Mm-hmm. So we would focus on seeking out what the students especially want from Marquette student government, and really honing in on their needs and their desires and what they want to be seen brought forth from MUSG. We can only bring forth what students tell us, and so we would go through actively seeking out opinions and such.
With all due deference to my colleagues, I'd like to disagree. I think that the Senate was certainly more inward focused first semester, but second semester that turned quite a bit, and I think that speaks as a testament to the leadership cabinet, the Senate, the committee chairs who are with us tonight. As legislative vice president, I can give you the numbers right now. We had 5 resolutions, 7 amendments, and 8 recommendations. So there's 12 pieces of legislation that were outward focused. 2 of those pieces were reserve fund allocations. And then in terms of the amendments and the way this statement arose was in regards to the reserve fund cap, which was directly addressing student concerns with an egregiously large reserve fund. Something of unspent student dollars continually rolling upward. So I think that there has been an inward focus. Have we been outward focused enough? No, and that's why when I sat down with the senators to plan the second semester retreat, we spent our entire time thinking about how can we get these senators to look outward? How can we work together to do that? We defined outreach. We worked with one another to set goals and priorities for each committee, and it's come to fruition. We just recently saw recommendations regarding D2L, other academic programs on campus. So to say the Senate's been explicitly inward focused or beyond, I would disagree with that. I think there's been a general difference in attitude from first semester to second semester. And that's a testament to the leadership cabinet, those senators who chair the committees.
And when you say second semester, you're talking about the spring semester?
The spring semester, yes.
Okay. Natalie, anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. Excuse me, going off of that,